place and how to do it successfully. Ann Albert is a fellow Rotarian at Madison West. She has worked as an aging services professional for nearly 3 decades, and she's executive director of Age Better Inc. It's a nonprofit organization in Madison. And Age Better is the parent organization and founder of Sharing Active Independent Lives, also known as SAIL, which is a membership organization for older adults living in Dane County. SAIL is part of the National Village Movement and a charter member of the Village to Village Network. I'm really excited to have Ann with us, so please welcome Ann Albert.
Thank you, Steve. So I brought my notes because this is a topic that is so near and dear to my heart that I don't want to keep you until 3 o'clock, and I will follow my notes. But we'll leave some time for any questions or discussion as well. So I'm really happy to be here. I think the last time I visited with your club, were you at the Sheraton at one time? Well, that might have been a while ago, right? Okay. So thank you, Steve, for the introduction. And for those of you who have not heard of Age Better, we're a 501c3 here in Madison, and our founding members and our member organizations are Oakwood Village and Attic Angel Association. So they founded Age Better about 18 years ago, and we're really trying to help create resources for people who may not decide to live at a senior community and wish to remain in their homes. So that was kind of the impetus in the beginning. So I've worked with older adults forever, it seems, 30 years, and I love it. I'm as passionate today as I was 30 years ago. I find that the value of older adults is just immeasurable in our community and in our society. They bring with them rich experiences, lifelong experience, wisdom, resilience, just gracefulness, generosity with their time and talents. The list goes on. I've witnessed firsthand what it looks like to age well and to age in place successfully. I've worked with older adults who span 3 generations. In fact, at SAIL right now, our membership includes people from the age of 58 to 102. And we have another person turning 101 this month, and they are living in their own homes, most of the SAIL members. Our centenarians are definitely living in their own homes, and it's exciting to see and to watch through the years what goes well and what doesn't. So while I may not be able to cite research for everything I'm going to talk about today, I can give you examples and real life examples. Of all the things that I've learned along the way is that there's no one size fits all with aging. I think we all agree to that, right? You've known people who've chosen to stay in their homes. You've known people who maybe have moved to apartments or congregate housing. We've seen people just in a variety of models, if you will. There are some new models emerging, which is exciting as well. We have assisted living, we have long-term care communities. They call them life plan communities. We have co-housing. In fact, in Madison, we have, I think, 3 or 4 senior co-housing developments that are really exciting. So there's no one size fits all, and we ourselves might change our minds along the way. So today I'm asked to talk about aging in place. And how many of you have heard that term, know what it means, probably heard it? I know you did before the presentation, right? Okay, so the CDC defines it as the ability to live in one's own home and community safely, independently, comfortably, regardless of age, income, or ability level. In the work I do with Age Better, and especially with the SAIL program, I like to refer to home as where you put your head at night. I think it's important that wherever we live, or if we do move from the home maybe that we've lived in for 20 or 30 years, that wherever we move, we can make it our home and make it feel homey. I really feel sad sometimes if I go to visit someone, maybe even in a rehab facility, or maybe it's even assisted living, where for some reason they're hesitant about bringing things that make them feel comfortable and at home. And that's kind of sad. We need to feel comfortable wherever we are. So in today's presentation, when I'm talking about home, well, in many ways I'm referring to a private residence. It could also refer to a condominium or apartment or congregate living community. A longtime SAIL member, Fred Ross, said to us once, he said, most of us would say it's definitely our goal to age in place, right? But let's remember that a goal is not a plan. And to age in place successfully, you really do need to have a plan. And I guess I don't mean that you have a rigid, unchangeable, set of planning steps and activities and requirements, but that you really have a plan in terms of you've gathered up along the way lots of kind of experience and knowledge from friends, but you also keep up to date with literature and research, but you have knowledge that helps you age in a healthy, active way, but also one that guides you as far as what might work best for you when you start needing it. So I think that was really important right off the bat. I think of several members over 30 years that I've worked with, but I also think of my Aunt Margaret, who was a big inspiration in my life. Margaret, she was an amazing woman. She lived in her own home until she died at the age of 93. She was getting ready for a Packer game, and she was dressed in her green and gold, preparing some hors d'oeuvres, probably mixing a martini, I'm guessing. And she died and just dropped of a heart attack. And throughout her life, she was a single woman, an entrepreneur, and she was also a Rotarian and a Paul Harris Fellow. But she basically made it clear to all of us around her, she had never had children. She said, I am not going to end my life in a facility, period. And we knew she meant business. And so what she did, she was in her 70s, she bought a duplex. She rented it out. She always seemed to find people who were good handymen or, younger people who needed work. But the idea was, in her mind, if she would ever need caregivers, that would be a nice way they could live on site without living in her house. She was very particular about that. But the other thing she did is she, in her lifetime, nurtured lots of friendships, just like we do at Rotary, out in the community, at church or whatever, but she nurtured friendships. But she also made sure she had plenty of friends who were younger too, not just her peers. And that's really important, that we nurture all of those friendships. She was willing to ask for help. And that's one thing with the SAIL program that I see constantly, where people wait too long to ask for some help, or they decide to do a chore or a task that ends up resulting in a fall or some kind of accident. So, she was not afraid to ask for help. Maybe that was her business background too. She was known to be a little bossy sometimes, but she definitely had no problem doing that. But she asked for help, and she was willing to hire help to come in. She knew that was a trade-off. You don't age in place and live at home, and I'm talking for a long period of time, even when things start to change, without needing to hire in services. I've seen that happen so many times where someone's insistent on staying put, but then when offered some services, whether it be to hire or volunteers to come in, there's a sense of, I don't need that, I'll wait till later. And then waiting usually ends up with some sort of negative result. So she was willing to do that. And she also was very insistent on making sure she had people to drive her around when she gave up her driver's license. So she knew it was important to get to the store, to medical appointments, but she also knew it was important, even more so, to get to bridge club, card games. And I'm talking to the wee hours of the night. But that was super important to her. And that's what kept her going. Just being able to stay engaged with things that she loved to do and people that she enjoyed. So it's really important to pay attention to those kinds of things. All of the people, whether it's through sale or personally in our lives, I guess most of us would find you need to have a plan and don't just have a goal. And these people all have something in common, people who've aged in place successfully. They made sure their plan was flexible. If you read art magazines, how many of you get those? I'm sure. AARP. Right? They talk about, 90% of us want to live in our homes. We want to age in place. I say, well, talk to people when they get into their later years. That can change. We might be very sure right now what we want or don't want, but that can change and it's okay. We don't know what's going to happen. Our relationships might change, our neighborhood might change, our health might change, whatever. Financially, things might change. So we always need to be flexible. When we think about our home and aging in place, it's important to think about your home design, where you live. It's a 2-story, 1-story. There are a lot of basic things you've all probably learned about or know about through the years. It's really important to have a 1st floor bedroom if you can. I mean, that's super important. Laundry facilities on the 1st floor. Bathroom and shower facility on the 1st floor, something that you can get into easily in case you do have a walker, or if you need to have some sort of arm rails, things like that. Enough width in the hallways. Some of the older homes have some very narrow hallways and things, so you need to be sure that they're accessible if you end up having a scooter or a walker, something like that. You need to have a home that can grow with you, basically, as time goes on. People sometimes forget about the garage and a place to get in and out of the house and making that safe. My husband and I, years ago, we added a garage onto the back of our house so that we could drive up into it because we had elderly relatives who were having a hard time climbing up all the deck stairs. And boy, is that nice when you're carrying in groceries. So that's really important. There are health and chronic conditions that you should think about if you have them, and how they affect your ability to function in life. I've heard of people literally feeling trapped in their homes, if they can't get out and do things and they feel that they can't move. So it's important to make sure your home is a place you're comfortable and that you can change somewhat so that it grows older with you. The other important, I would say, pillar of this aging in place successfully is your support system. And I think that's sometimes forgotten about, but it's super, super important. And I remember years ago when we first started SAIL, that was one of the things the nursing school professor had taught us was, the support system is number one. Who are you going to call when something goes haywire on the weekend or at night? Or who's going to be there for you if something happens? There has to be some sort of either paid services or family or good friends that you can rely on. The financial situation that you have. Some people, their homes are where they need to be. They need to stay there from a financial aspect. Other people have some options. And when you talk about staying in your home, when you get older, if you do need some help, being realistic about what that costs and, the trade-off. Being in your home, you have property taxes, things like that. Having a car, you have to pay for insurance and all of that. Sometimes you do a trade-off. You kind of make a list. What can I really afford? Some people think that Medicare covers everything. How many of us have learned that, right? That's not true. Medicare is for a temporary situation, like being at a rehab facility or having rehab services come into your home, skilled services, nursing, PT, OT. Home care is different. And right now that's still out of pocket. There are some long-term insurance plans, for example, where you can get some of that covered. But a lot of people aren't aware of that if you need home care right now, it is private pay. And that runs probably on the lower end, $30 to $35 an hour. So when you think about, oh, for example, if I have early dementia or I have a condition where I think I'm going to need more than maybe 8 or 10 hours of care every day, then it might be time to really be open to, well, if I did need to go to an assisted living or a place where I can get support and services on site, let's plan ahead for that. It's much better to make a decision knowing what's out there and what kind of places have good reputations and what you prefer than making those decisions in a crisis. But that financial aspect does play into the decision-making and hiring services and care, again, to help us care for our home and ourselves. I think the Medicare, the CMS, they are looking at and really trying to support more aging in place services though. So I don't think it's as bleak as it is what it sounds like. There's a lot of legislation being considered and a lot of services that they're trying to cover because it's understood that we don't have enough facilities or places for people to go, and nor should they. Some people are better off staying in their homes. When creating your aging in place plan, like I said, looking at your home structure, how many of you have heard of universal design? You heard that term? Oh my gosh, what? Talk to something. Okay, so if you Google universal design, you'll find it's the design and composition of an environment so that it can be accessed, understood, and used to the greatest extent possible by all people, regardless of age, ability, or disability. So when you think about it, if you're going to a restaurant or hotel, you'll hear that it's accessible, right? Accessible doesn't always mean it has universal design components built in. So I learned this really well through Jane Nemke Earl. I don't know if any of you know Jane. She's in Madison. Steve introduced me to her. She's a longtime SAIL member. So she was diagnosed with muscular dystrophy when she was in her 20s, but now she is in her late 60s, early 70s, I'm not sure. But she now uses, she went from using a scooter to using an electric wheelchair right now. But she has studied and lived universal design her whole life. She's been an active person her entire life, business-wise and personally. And she, a few years ago, took a condo that she's living in and had it totally converted to universal design standards. She literally remodeled it. She knew that there would come a day, and 3 years later, the day has come where she's using a wheelchair and she needs to be able to function. She needs to be able to cook her meals, come and go, shower, bathe, whatever she's doing, she needs to do that. And so she put out, or she's designing now, a website called Designs to Thrive, or Designs to Thrive. And it's not quite up yet, but she's created some videos, and we'll soon have those on the SAIL website as well, but she's created some videos, literally walking you through her condo and showing you all the different aspects of universal design. So enough, you know, when you go to a hotel, I mentioned it's accessible. There's still a little bump getting into the shower, for example. So for someone like her, that's still an obstacle. So we're talking about, you know, the way the floor is designed. Talking about she can reach it and pull her clothes on and off. The way the kitchen sink touching it rather than having to even use a lever. You know, you think of levers in all the bathrooms, but being able to access things like that, even with just simple touch. Now with technology, we're really fortunate because we have the smart homes, right? You know, where you can clap and the light goes on, or even more sophisticated systems where just movement in your home can trigger lights in your hallway. Things that are really exciting, ways that you can see who's at the front door by looking at your smartphone. There are a lot of wonderful ways that we can age in place now that we certainly would have never dreamed of 20 years ago. So making sure our homes really support us in that way. Jane is a color expert too, and I want to make sure I mention that because color is something so I just wanted to mention those few things. There's chair lifts too. Some people live in homes where they want to stay, but maybe they just really want to be able to get to that lower level to get at something. I would still say move your washer and dryer upstairs, but you know, stair lifts are a great resource too. Some homes, people are even putting in elevators to make it easy, which is really cool. So there's a lot of options. How am I doing on time?
Got it.
At least 10 more minutes.
10 minutes,
before
yeah.
Okay, I'll hurry through this. So anyway, the other thing is home upkeep and making sure you have trusted services that you can have coming in to keep your home up. You know, our homes are, for a lot of us, our best asset, right? So we want to make sure we keep those up and we're able to do that, but we're able to live safely too. I won't give a talk on falls prevention, but that is really a major part of aging in place, right? I think we've all probably known people who have the best intentions, great habits, great skill sets about living at home, getting resources, and then one decision or one accident ends up resulting in spending time in the nursing home and maybe needing assisted living. So falls prevention. There is a local resource called Safe Communities. Maybe you've heard of Safe Communities, but they have a wonderful section, I know you can, on their website on falls prevention. And on it, you can find CDC brochures and there's assessments you can take for yourself at any age. There's also home safety checklists that you can get. That, you know, you could do your own home safety check and figure out what do I need to do. And it could be even for entertaining relatives or having people come and stay with you, but making sure your home is safe. So I suggest that. And I also don't want to stop without really focusing on things like not just the practical things, groceries, meals, all of that. There's lots of in-home services in our community, but also keeping that social calendar or keeping those social connections. At the SAIL organization, we, for example, don't limit rides to medical appointments. People need more than medical appointments. And besides that, those waiting rooms, they're they don't have the magazines they used to. So we need to be enjoying life, right? And we need to be able to get to things. So I have a list of resources and I am going to email a copy to you so that you can send them out. And I also want to mention the Journey of Aging. You can get this at any local grocery store. It comes out twice a year, so it's usually pretty up to date. It's got some good articles, but also a lot of community resources in here that are designed for people who are aging and all of us. So I would suggest this. I'm also going to encourage you to check out the SAIL website, sailtoday.org, and that's the organization I represent. We really embody all the things I talked about, you know, keeping the home safe, having pre-screened or vetted service providers, people you can trust, helping people build friendships through social programs, helping people identify who their support system is, and many more things. So I'll leave these here too for anybody who wants to grab one. Any questions? Yes, sir.
I just want to thank you for coming back. I remember when you were with us before, and you said a couple things that really hit home. And one is that as we age, we need to redefine what it means to be independent. And we talked about that a little bit in getting the kinds of services you need, the kind of assistance you need. But the one that really kind of hit home for me was cleaning out my rain gutters. You know, because I've noticed that my balance is not as good as it was, you know, a few years ago. And so when we had a new roof put on, we also had new rain gutters with gutter guards on them. So I don't have to climb up a ladder.
Very
anymore.
good.
So I just really appreciated that sort of shift of a different way of seeing things, that being independent doesn't mean you continue to do everything stubbornly the way you always did it. Because
Amen.
You know,
And do you feel less independent because you got gutter guards?
I'm so glad I don't have to climb a ladder anymore. You know, and scooping on all that slimy stuff, you know.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I would have fired that out regardless.
yeah.
That's an important point. Yeah.
You know, and I, you know, here in Wisconsin, I remember a few years ago, Max didn't eat.
Yes.
After he fell off his roof, he was
Yes,
up there.
I remember it.
Whatever, and he was, you know, older and.
Yeah,
We did
I
have
remember
other
that.
Instances, there are stories we know of people who tried to do things that they were
Oh,
really
yeah.
not in any position to do. So,
it can happen.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yes, sir.
Are you familiar with a group called Senior Forward, or business called Senior Forward?
I know moving forward, they're a sales service provider. And they've helped a lot of our members.
Yeah, Mary and Ray used to.
Well, that's the kind of reason I brought it up.
Yes.
Because I think I'm a retired realtor, and I know that maybe moving from a two-story house to a condo or wherever you want to move, one of the big, huge challenges is what to do with your stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And I've just heard rave reviews about that service, and
Yeah.
so just to, and she was a Rotary member as well. But I know my neighbor used them. She just raved it. Moved from a two-story home on my block to Oakwood,
Yeah.
and just raved about the organizational. I mean, just, you know, she knew where to go to get the services. So anyway, I'm glad to hear you say the same thing.
Well, and the beauty of that particular service, as well as getting rid of your stuff, is that from the people I've worked with, thinking of moving is overwhelming and it's an obstacle. So what they do is they work it out so they can come in, and then they look at your new place and they measure things up with your help. But a lot of times they say, go have coffee, spend the day with your friends, come back at 5 o'clock. And then when you come back, you walk in and pictures are hung. It looks like you've lived there. It's a beautiful transition where certainly you change a few things later, but it's not such an awful, sitting there with empty boxes and not knowing where to put anything.
You're overwhelming adjective or whatever that is.
Yeah, it's overwhelming. Yeah. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to clarify, moving forward or moving out?
Oh, moving forward.
Okay,
It's
so
the
moving out
company,
also
yeah.
Has funding available for accessibility updates.
Oh, good.
And I'm with Habitat for Humanity.
Wonderful.
We have a home repair program that we can also do accessibility updates, stuff like that. as payment, I think moving out funding has some forgivability to it. And we've actually collaborated on some of that where we did work and they got the funding.
Nice. So that's a great tip. Yeah. Thank you.
It cost me publicity bucks.
I gotta write your number down. No, that's good to know though. Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
Are there any rules of thumb for budgeting, like looking forward and saying, I don't need extra services now, but in 10 years I am, how much should I have in the bank to pay?
A lot, yeah. That's a tough one because obviously that's the hard part about all of this is nobody knows what the future brings, right? Or will bring. But like I mentioned, just now, even now, getting home care coming in, you know, like a companion to help out with chores or to help you dress or whatever, you're talking at least $30, maybe $35 an hour. And that would be on the lower end. And they usually want, you know, 3-hour minimums, things like that. So, I mean, I guess you can also do live-in support. So that's another thing. If you're thinking about aging in place and you might have a little place that someone could live there and provide care in exchange for rent. So, you know, that, but to give an amount, oh my, I
was
think.
thinking more of what you mentioned fairly earlier
Mhm.
in your presentation, short of having, 8 hours a day companion,
Mhm.
but the cleaning out the gutters or
Oh, I
various
see.
other jobs like that, whether there were any kind of average or big figures that.
I don't have it in my head right now, what that would be, but I think that would be an interesting thing to look up or even for us to evaluate, you know, what that or assess.
Yeah, I don't
Because
even know
you're-
where to look it up or what to call it.
Yeah. I mean, most of our service hours are, what are you saying?
Carol will do it.
Oh.
Oh, terrible.
But I think that, you know, when you look at services, like for example, snow plowing, it all keeps changing. We had a member tell us she has a tiny little driveway and she got a quote and it was like $120 per time. And it was not even shoveling her little sidewalk. So, I mean, it is really tough to find providers to do that stuff because they want to do commercial work, a lot of them. But, you know, handymen, it's usually about $30 an hour, maybe 40, with people we've worked with. And tech tutoring, you know, I didn't even talk about technology. That's a whole nother world. But, you know, making sure that you have those services, but that would be an interesting kind of scenario to draw up, you know, what would we be talking about cost-wise with upkeep, personal services, all of that. So much depends on what you need, you know, or what you think you'll need. Yep.
And you mentioned that sale members tend to join in their late 50s and older. How can we sort of assess when it would be a good time to join an organization like sale? Do you have to wait till you have some issue, or how do you recommend we look at it?
How do I recommend you do, or how do I want you to? No, I think it's really important, like we talk about planning, is part of that is being prepared, right? And not waiting till a crisis happens. So, I mean, we have people who join young, like in their 50s, because they want to pay it forward. And maybe even their 60s or 70s. I don't like to use age a whole lot because that 101-year-old I'm friends with, she's always reminding me of things I forget. So I never want to say that, you know, exclusively, but truly, you know, some people join for that reason. You know, I want to pay it forward because someday I'm going to need that. And we do now through 17 years of sale, we have that happening. We have charter members who are now receiving a lot of the services they helped volunteer with, helping each other out. But I would say, you know, definitely don't wait until a crisis. And with sale, for example, in the village model, it's definitely a pay it forward. There are 2 levels. You can join at kind of a social level too. And I think too, being on the circuit, I would say, of getting updates and information all the time. Like the School of Nursing, they have a wonderful e-newsletter called Center for Aging and Research. And I just got one today, and the topic was aging in place, and some big study that's they're participating in and some program that's going to make aging in place even safer and more healthy for people. So, I mean, that knowledge, or that they don't talk about it on channel 3 or channel 15, you know, on the news and everything. It's not something that we're going to be fed all the time. Certainly on the internet, you can follow sites and all of that, but I would say if you enjoy helping other people and you, you know, think, well, you know, I'd like to hire people in my home that I can trust. You know, those are advantages you can reap from sale without having to wait too long. Yes, sir. Anyone else? Oh, okay. So,
Say, Ann, what's the definition of, did you say co-housing?
yeah, co-housing.
What is that?
So that's an interesting model of aging, and it's been around for a while. That is, the newest one is Linden Co-Housing. But it's basically building a housing structure where each occupant has their own apartment, or you might call it's set up like a condo. So you own your unit, but you live in community in that the units may not be huge, but you have a community room or building, usually attached, where people can gather and you might share meals together. For example, a lot of people are artistic and they have hobbies, but you don't want to bring all that with you. So like the newest one, I think it's Linden, but it's on the east side. They have even a workshop, and they have equipment, you know, carpentry equipment. Some of them have other types of studios, art studios. So in other words, you do things, but you can share space. And some are multi-generational and some are for seniors only. But it's pretty much living in an area, but you own the unit, and then you live in community with the fellow residents, which is a nice option, you know.
Social stuff.
Social things, yeah. Or if you need help, maybe you had your knee redone and you need some rides or whatever, it's pretty easy and accessible way to meet with people and all of that. Yes,
That is one of the things I've seen over the years, is that sometimes people are isolated in their homes.
yes,
You mentioned that earlier in your presentation. And then
yes.
we had a neighbor who, when I was growing up, who was living all by herself, and she got into a really bad way, you know, but when she was moved into a congregate living facility, she improved her health,
Yeah,
and her intellectual abilities improved, and people sometimes so stubbornly cling to their home that they can't see
yeah,
that there maybe are other better choices, and that a house after all is only a thing, but a lot of people
it
can't
is.
see that.
But if you're
But they
isolated,
can be so much healthier
yeah,
in a congregate setting, or at least even in your home, if you are connected to some services and some organizations and some people.
Right.
It's so much better,
I agree.
so much better.
And they say, you know, you hear about the increasing cases of dementia and things. That's really important to have social connections and to be engaged with other people, because loneliness, and then you see depression, and then you see these declines in every aspect. So you're right. Home is not always the best place. I will totally agree with that. I'd never say everyone should stay at home, and I'd never say that everyone should move.
Yeah.
You know, it's really, we're individuals, right? So, but thanks for bringing that up, because that happens too often
Yeah.
too, and a neighbor might not notice even, you know, what's happening.
Joan? Yes, I just want to make a comment. My girlfriend, Jan Bice, fell on Tuesday and cracked her skull and instantly died, almost instantly died. But we had moved her into Vista West and and she was getting along fairly well there. moving out of a big house, but you never know when these things are going to happen. And so her eyesight was going, so I don't know, but haven't gotten the autopsy back yet. So this does happen very suddenly. It's very hard on everybody. But
Yeah.
thank you for sharing these things.
You. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear about her. Yeah. So, any other questions? Forget that. Thank you. You're up on the slot.
They want to transfer.
Which club are you part of?
I'm Madison West, so we are a very tiny club. But
Well,
high in spirits.
thanks again, Anne, for being here today. It was awesome to hear about all of the things that SAIL does. And I wanted to let you know that we make a donation on behalf of all of our speakers, including you, to the End Polio Now Fund for Rotary International. So we'll do that in your honor as well. Our speaker next week, I'm very excited about, is Kelly Sheffield, the coach of the reigning NCAA championship basketball or women's volleyball team. So it's destined to be a very popular speaker. So if you are thinking of coming or bringing a guest, make sure that you RSVP early so that we can arrange if we need extra space here. So that will be a very fun speaker. I think he's going to just talk about he will probably talk about the team. Volleyball team, yeah. He's been the coach a while.
Aging in place.
All right, well, have a great Rotary week. We'll see you all next week. Thanks.